When I started my career in documentary filmmaking, I admired those thriving in the industry. I was right where you are, dreaming big and scared of stumbling. Years later, I went from distributing my very first documentary to filming in over 35 countries. And now, this podcast is where we share skills, stories, and lessons with filmmakers, including those who won Oscars and Emmys, to help each other grow and create impactful documentaries. In the first part of my interview with Sam, we talked about how mixing isn't just about blending sounds, but is about creating an immersive experience. And probably like color correction, these are the things that you don't always perceive them, yet you receive them. It's just that you're not conscious about. In this specific episode, Sam is going to cover the tool he uses, how to test audio, at which point the sound mixer should be involved in the production, and much, much more. If you want to learn more about sound mix DIY and how to organize your timeline and that kind of thing, well, we have specific exclusive content for you on howwefilm.com. You just need to go on the website to subscribe. It's for free. You don't need to pay anything. And also, if you have any question regarding documentary production, remember we have a section on howwefilm.com where you can submit your question. I'll do my best to create a video with the answer, and then we're going to publish on our podcast documentary questions. And don't forget, if you don't want to miss the next episodes, make sure that you subscribe and activate notification. Welcome to another episode of How We Film. Today with me, I have a dub mixer. His name is Sam Castleton. Sam, thank you for being with me today. So the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast is because, especially when it comes on documentary filmmaking, the first thing that comes to a mind of a filmmaker is not sound mixing. Like that's not probably. I promise you. That's probably you learn probably this at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't necessarily have people that's like from the beginning. I thought about sound mixing because I wanted to have this. I don't know. Maybe it happens. Does that happen to you? You have people that come and tell you that sound mixes was one of the first thing they were thinking when they started the project.
Not in that way, but we do have people come to us with scripts and talk about the sound and get our ideas, and we sort of talk sound jazz early on in a project, definitely,
Okay.
which is really rewarding.
Does that happen often?
Not very often. It depends on relationships with the clients and how sort of much of a one-man band it is, what the budget is, etc. Often these things are like highly top secret as well. But you know, it can be a really, really successful chat with filmmakers. I did a. I'm going to go on a little anecdote now. I did a really cool drama with a really amazing director actually, and we read the scripts, went through the scripts, and did our sort of spiel with that. And it was about when Cary Grant introduced Timothy O'Leary to LSD back in the 50s or whatever it was.
Okay.
And they have this, and he's on set and he's filming in his green room and he keeps sort of tripping on LSD. And they go in and out of the film and then he's back in reality again. And they have the sort of famous scene with the propeller plane going over him, and then he's sort of back in his room. And we were saying, oh, you could sort of, you know, blur the sound of the propeller with the ceiling, with a ceiling fan in his room, in his green room that he's in. And the director said, yeah, I love that. That's amazing. He was brilliant. He was just like, he loved being like listening to everybody, you know, not just us. And then lo and behold, we get the film and they've like shot it purposely in that way now between these transitions. So the propeller from the plane goes into the camera and then it like fades to a ceiling fan and then it pans down onto Cary Grant. So it's really cool how a sound note actually impacted filming. I mean, there's not many of those examples, but it's just a good example of sort of getting involved early and being creative and so on. But so it's usually, if it's early, it's like, oh, you know, I think sound can really do some cool things here. What do you guys think? And then sort of just spitballing, basically.
So what I'm learning as I'm talking with you is that maybe those conversations should happen even before you go shoot the film with with artists like you, like, because if I come to you, I guess, with my idea, and then I
Mhm.
ask you, hey, what are the ways that you think I can, I can tell better my story if I record the audio while I'm on these things, or like, I personally, I
Yeah.
would love to have that input from the beginning, because when it's, especially if I'm going to go film in another country, as it often happens, I don't know that I can get another chance to go film that stuff just for,
Yeah,
and maybe I need
exactly.
to recreate the visual, like it's a mess. But if I have a conversation with you before, I think you're giving me a good idea. Like I'm like it's way better.
I think it's a good practice for directors and filmmakers generally. I'm not just talking about me or about sound. It's to, you're employing very specialized, skilled people, and I think you need to have your vision and it's your baby 100%. But that can be coloured and shaped, and I think it's the best directors I work with are open to ideas, and they would dismiss them and be like, "No, I think that's a terrible idea. That's not what I want to do at all." That's fair enough. But often with these things, it's sort of, what about this and what about that? You're sort of throwing stuff at the wall, and occasionally something sticks, and maybe it'll be something in the costume design, or
Yeah.
it can be anything. I went to Harry Potter with my 9-year-old recently, and I learnt that Dolores, who's one of the sort of baddies in that, the costume design starts light pink, and as she gets more evil, it gets like a darker pink. And so that's just a good example of, costume design getting involved early and say, hey, what about? And it doesn't have to come from the costume design person, or it doesn't have to come from the sound person. It's just sort of being open to ideas from everybody. And you don't necessarily need me or anyone to sort of talk to me at the start of your project, but it can be really beneficial, especially if you've got a really high concept creative film. That's when those things are really important. Obviously, if you've got a simple documentary about talking heads, then it's not so important.
I never thought about that, to be honest. But I think it's actually very interesting. Yeah, I agree with you. If you have a high concept story or project that you really wanted to put it together in a rounded way, I think for me, but I will benefit from that. Not on a average documentary production, uh, but on specific project, I can see how, maybe nothing exceptional is going to come out, but at least you've done that part and you know that you're not going to have any surprises, at least.
Yeah, and also, yeah, so a lot of the conversations are technical, but yeah, it's just like getting those creative juices going. Like I say, it might not be that anything sticks or any sort of epiphanies come out of it, but just sort of thinking about sound generally, you might leave that meeting and then something pops into your brain because you just sort of, again, started to think about sound in a
Uh,
different way or what it can do.
yeah. I would like to touch a little bit about the sound mixing principle. What would you
Mhm.
say are let's start from the very basic. How would you say, let me put it this way. What are good elements of a good sound mix?
That's a really good question. It varies on depending on what the project is. Usually, if you don't, if the sound doesn't stick out too much, usually that's a good mix. It should feel organic and part of the picture and part of what's happening on screen
Mm,
and realistic.
mm,
But really, you can probably break it into three things, I guess. Clean dialogue, like I say, dialogue, your story's being told through dialogue. You shouldn't have distractions. Clean, concise dialogue, purposeful music, and thought out sound design, or
mm.
sound effects. Not just a sound for this. It's actually there's a thought behind it.
When you say there is a thought behind, can you tell me a little bit? What do you mean? Can you give me an example? For
So
example.
we did I did a science series, and they had this guy who I think he was having brain surgery, and they did a background story with him, and he was into surfing. And throughout the film, we needed whooshes as transitions, basically. And so every time we were with him, we used a wave sound as a whoosh. So instead of just getting a whoosh, we're getting something that's relevant to him and his character and his story. You can use sound like that very much like a composer would on a film and give people sound signatures. we're doing a docudrama at the moment as well. It's a horror, true story horror. It's really cool actually. True story horror, and there's like this scratching sound, and we've sort of tied that to a character, and now every time we want to imply that character's there, we sort of recall back a reverbed scratching sound.
And Sam, would you say that you do that in a subtle way, or you make it clear? I guess it depends on the project.
It's usually it's usually subtle, but oftentimes you want it to be clear, because when something comes back, you want it to be recognized. Usually, have a sound recognition to it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
usually it's subtle, but the point I'm making is your sound design is thought out. Like there's a reason that you've used that particular sound.
I know, which probably makes the difference compared to, let's say, an amatorial project to a professional project, where you maybe if you put the same cut together, with an amateur approach and a professional approach, and you only watch the amateur, you think, if the story is good, if the work is good, you think that, oh, that's good. And then you listen to what a professional does. Well, then you probably see that's the only chance that you have to really see how important that work is, because it's a whole, it takes the thing to a whole next level. Like, the example that you just mentioned, if you don't go there, you don't know what's there. You know what I mean? That's what I'm thinking as you're talking.
You can do something simple and it will serve a function, and that's absolutely fine. But if you want to be different or just be really true to the characters in your story, then you can really tap into that and chime into that with sound.
And what about balance? Can you tell me a little bit more about balance between dialogue, music, and effects?
So we would go through all the dialogue first and level that. It needs to meet certain requirements for theatres or for broadcasters or streamers. So we'll get that in a certain loudness range, and then we will mix everything around that. And usually it depends how cinematic something needs to be. So if it's got gunshots or a big swelling music, or then that's going to affect the overall sound. So you might need to sort of have quieter moments with that as well.
Okay. And
but everything's anchored around the dialogue. The dialogue is the anchor element level wise,
and you build on top of that. And when you told me that we could record this episode, I wanted to ask you this question. That was the first question that came to my mind, and is, can you please help me solve this big issue of when you add music to the dialogue, and then the dialogue is over? What do you do with the music? Can you go back up with the volume? Can the music fill in and fill more the scene with the music? Or no, you don't do that, right? If the music level is there, when the dialogue is over, you keep the music where it is. You don't need to raise the volume of the music.
Yeah, the way to think about it is the other way around. So you're actually dipping down your music under your dialogue, and then you're coming back up when you're out of your dialogue. Usually, obviously, everything's different. The point, the music needs to have a purpose. So maybe it's tying a certain scene or a certain thought together. But you're pulling down your music, and the reason is, I said earlier, like, sounded like pulling focus. So we want to pull focus on the dialogue now. Okay, so let's bring down the music, and we'll do that with faders on fingers on faders here. So it has a much more natural and organic feel, and get it exactly right. So it's sort of noticeable but not distracting, which is a really fine line. Usually when it's over, you want to come back up into your mood or the theme that you want for that particular scene. So you'll come up. But it also depends on what the music is. So it might have really harsh elements to it, like brass and strings and higher frequency percussion. So that maybe comes in at a different part or starts a different part, and that is high frequency. So your ear's drawn to that more. So you want to balance that. So it's a real moving target. It really depends on what the music is, what the music's doing the bigger picture, like, but the only thing I wouldn't recommend is have your music dip down, then your dialogue starts, and then your music sort of carries on while someone's talking, and then when they're talking, it's finished. Because really, usually, not always, but usually, if that's the case, then your music should just kind of end when the dialogue sort of starts. It's just dip down and fade off stealthily, because then you just want to focus on the dialogue. There's not a lot of reason or point to have music just bubbling under dialogue willy-nilly for no particular reason. If you want to come back up and keep this thought going, then then do that.
Okay.
But if you've got someone talking for a while, and I would just sort of get it out, and then let's just focus on the dialogue. And when music comes out under dialogue, it gives words much more power. So if someone has a really killer ending line, we'll sort of have the music tipping, and then we'll come out for that end line, and it will give that ending line way more weight. That's so they're the sort of things I would recommend.
This is really helpful, Sam. Personally, and I think for many others, because I had different interesting experience over that, and like I felt like there has never been like a clear, strong sense on how to approach that. Even when I work with people that I trust now, there is always this sense that I double question that part. Is like, are we doing okay on the music going back up this way, or And thankfully they're reassuring me. But I wanted to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, and as a side note, I think questioning yourself is a sign of a very successful person in this industry. I question myself all the time, and I think it's really, people treat it as a bad thing, and I think as long as you are aware of it, it can be incredibly helpful, and it can be your sort of superpower, because it pushes you to always, get things right, basically.
Yeah, and I think especially because to me it's a matter of respecting and loving the audience in every little decisions that you make, right? I'm deciding with that decision if I'm going to love and respect the audience or not.
Yeah, no, yeah, and also on the small things. Sorry, I will get back on track, but the small
go ahead.
things, I think if you have one small thing, then it will just sort of wash most people over. In sound, this is, but the key to small things, the power, and also the bad thing is the repetition of it. So if you constantly are doing a small thing that's sort of bad, then it sort of rubs off on the audience. Whereas if it's good, then it really elevates the film. We talked about waves as whooshes. If it was just done once, it's a bit like, well, okay, that's kind of cool, but no one's really going to notice. But the point is, it's done throughout the film, and so it's just a small thing. It's subtle, but it's throughout the film. It makes it all together in one watch, in one viewing. It makes a big difference.
No, it's true. That's true. Listen, let's jump a little bit on the DIY aspect, because I know you are professional, but I think that nobody better than you can help maybe somebody that for the moment or for different kind of projects, he cannot hire professionals like you, right? So what would you say are the tools and software that you recommend for filmmakers that work on a budget?
In audio, everyone uses Pro Tools. You don't have to use Pro Tools, but it's really the industry standard. It can be quite complicated to look at when you first open it up, because it can do so many things, and it has pretty much a button for everything right in front of your face in immediate access. So the sort of the GUI of it can be a bit intimidating, but you just need to learn the really simple parts of that. You can actually get Pro Tools for free now. Only has 8 tracks, the free version, but that should be might be enough for someone starting out. You can get more tracks with the subscriptions, £90 a year.
Okay.
But yeah, obviously you need to know what you're doing with those tools, and I just recommend, the manual's always boring, I know, and it's probably intimidating as well. Maybe YouTube videos now, but as long as you you just want to level it, get the audio levels right.
So you would say, instead of doing your audio work on Premiere or Final Cut, DaVinci, you name it, in your editing software, use a separate software just to take care of the audio, and then...
Well, yeah, so it's actually a difficult question for me to
okay, because of the process.
Answer that specifically.
Yeah, because you
Well, because
That's
I
true.
don't use Avid or DaVinci, so my understanding is that they've really come on leaps and bounds in terms of what they can
Mm.
do in terms of audio. So you might be able to do your entire in fact, I'm sure you can do your entire thing within your editing software.
Yeah, my experience is that Premiere doesn't give you the same stretch clearly. Of course,
Mm.
it's an editing software,
Yeah.
or even DaVinci. You can do the basic things, but then if you want to take it to the next level, you cannot do it.
I should just quickly
Uh,
interject. What you really get with something with Pro Tools is you get what really separates out is all the plugins that you get. So the EQ, the compression, the noise
mm,
reduction is you have access to all these really high end tools there. So
okay,
yeah.
okay. Um, when it comes to dialogue, can you walk me through the process
Mhm.
of cleaning and enhancing dialogue?
Yeah, the main thing that we do is we reconform the sound rushes, and we get the individual mics. So if you've got multiple people and multiple mics, so that's the first
Mm,
thing. Don't use the mix tracks that you got necessarily from your sound recordist on set. If you just want to hear one particular person, then use
mm,
that mic. In terms of cleanup, we will do things differently. We would tend to get the boom and the lav to sort of get a bit of the room
mm,
as well.
mm.
But if you're just in an editing bit of software, I'd probably just pick one mic because you can get phase
Yeah,
problems there. So picking the better mic, I know that sounds really simple, but it's so true. A radio mic can have all sorts of rustle on it, but it can be close, whereas a boom can have all sorts of reverb on it. So you want to pick the lesser evil.
mm,
And then yeah, things like the rustle, the mouth, the clicks. So there's all sorts of declick software
mm.
now. Plosives, so your P's and your B's, you expel air when you do those, and that implodes the mic. Um, and you get background noise, distortion, and it's all basically trying to restore the sound to its natural form. You have to be really careful with all of these tools because you can push them too far. They all sort
Yeah.
of, are designed to sort of, wow people on a trailer and go, hey, look, we've completely got rid of this noise, but often that means the dialogue sounds like it's underwater. So I think that's the important thing, is to never go too far with any of these tools. In fact, I'd really strongly advise doing it subtly. And yeah, the main aim is to restore the dialogue to how it sounds when you're talking to someone face to face, because a mic is only
Mm,
a electronic representation of that, and it has all its own
mm.
issues. It's close to what you hear in nature, or naturally with your ears, but it's you don't hear plosives, you don't hear
Yeah, right.
distortion. A mic picks that up. And the idea is, like I say, that your dialogue is as clear from distraction as possible. So you're just focusing on your person's words and nothing else.
And have you ever seen some common mistakes that filmmakers make in sound mixing, or maybe some bad choices that they make in sound mixing? And how would you say they can avoid them?
It's a very good question. We talked about music earlier. That's
Mm,
definitely a big one. Music just going on meaninglessly
mm,
is kind of, I do try and avoid that. Um, I would also not get too tied to your sound in the edit. And once you've sort of settled with your picture, approach it how a sound person would and go, okay, what can we do to improve this
mm.
fresh? And the one thing we deal with a lot is what we call guide track love or temp love. And it's someone's so used to hearing something in a certain way over and over again, they get used to that. And if it's different, they suddenly get a bit scared. And I think if you're doing something your own stuff, you need to avoid that as well and sort of approach it fresh.
Mm,
I can appreciate that's extremely difficult to do. And then I think certainly, again, if we have a filmmaker who's doing it themselves, one difficult thing to do is to make added sounds realistic. And that's obviously what you employ the professionals for. But if you're doing it yourself, I would just, one bit of advice is not to have any of those things too loud, I
okay.
guess. Um, yeah, and like I say, purposeful music, don't have your effects too loud. and yeah, get your dialogue as clean as
Mm,
possible.
I wanna do a little test with you. Not a test. I wanna
Okay.
let's say I wanna give you like an image, an idea for example, I have a specific scene, Sam. I come to you and I say, Sam, I have this scene of maybe I have something specific in mind at this moment where I worked on a documentary scene where there was this girl by the waterfall, right? She was telling her story, and her story somehow was connected with nature and waterfall and all of that. When I come to you, um, and I say, Sam, how would you make this more interesting? What are the things that you look at it, and how do you come up with ideas?
Yeah, so like I say, approaching it with a fresh mind for sound, understanding what the film is trying to do as a big
Uh,
picture, what that particular scene is trying
uh,
to do, and if it's not trying to do anything particularly other than just progress the story, then maybe maybe it doesn't need anything else. Maybe we just maybe want to take that waterfall out, and just have them listen to the dialogue more. But yeah, in terms of creatively, it's really just understanding the director, understanding the story, understanding the characters, understanding where, like I say, if you want to pull focus on certain things, how that could improve things, or pull perspective onto a particular character. Yeah, there's lots of different ways. I think I've just learned it through experience and just being open minded and sort of going, hey, we might be able to do this. But I'd say just a fresh mind from yourself or from a professional would really help.
So I guess you put all these things together, like you're trying to understand what's the scope of that scene, and because the same, if you look, is
Yes.
not an objective situations where you say, oh, when you have that, this is what you do. I guess you have to understand what's the
No.
scope of what's of that specific scene, and then maybe you put together a
Yeah.
little bit of director vision, director taste, creative idea that you've
Yeah.
got, right? You put them all together, and that's where the solution comes out. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Collaboration, trying stuff out. Like I say, if you're trying to be different, then that you need to just try things really and see what sticks, and if that improves it or not. Yeah, it's a very good question. Like it's that thing that's so difficult. It's creativity. It's just you've got to think about stuff in terms of sound and that whole world, and yeah, the what the scene's trying to do is the really big one, I'd say. So
Yeah.
if you want something afterwards to be really powerful and impactful, then it's good to have the scene before it quite quiet,
Okay.
for example.
What tips do you have for mixing um, challenging environments or with imperfect recordings? Let's say when somebody comes to you and it gives you a bad audio, how do you handle
hmm
that? Like, do you have situations
hmm
where you just say, hey, we cannot use this at all?
Yeah, definitely. There are definitely scenarios like that. It's happening less often, actually, because the tools are getting so
Mm,
much better each year, and especially now with the advent of AI, we've had some really good neural network dialogue-based plugins that clean up stuff really
mm,
well. Again, you have to be really careful with that, and people can definitely overdo it. But yeah, we have these denoiser plugins that can, and we have EQ to sort of notch out
mm,
frequencies. There's a whole suite of things called RX by Isotope that just allows us to clean up all the dialogue and get it as free as
mm.
possible.
Oh, you do use iStop.
Yeah, I use Isotope. I use Isotope a lot. I use it to edit dialogue together, make stuff sound more natural. We talk. Often we get a lot of synced audio, Franken-bit audio, a few words together, but the way people they speak fluently and they shape their mouths from one word to the next, so cutting in one word can be really tough, whereas
Mm,
using a spectrogram like Isotope, you can go in and separate the overlaps from the frequencies, so do that a lot for dialogue editing. That's really
Oh, wow.
helpful.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
interesting. That's really interesting. Nowadays we have computer, we have iPad, then you have your phone, but then your phone is connected with your Bluetooth headphones, and then like you have so many different ways that you can listen to the audio. How does this
Mhm.
affect the sound mix?
Yeah, it affects it a
Mm.
lot, in good and bad ways. So the the biggest one is the broadcast stuff we do for the
Uh,
streamers. People can listen back to that in Dolby Atmos 7.1, 5.1, and the stereo mix. We have specialist tools for those sorts of fold downs, but we will certainly listen to the stereo mix separately through a TV and through headphones. And the reason being that in 5.1 or 0.1 formats, you get a subwoofer, and that gets sent lots of bass information, and your stereo mix doesn't have that. It's completely different
yeah.
sound. It's treated completely different sonically. In fact, we did a scene where this doctor sort of cut a nerve in surgery, and with this big build up, and in the 5.1 7.1 Atmos mix, it just went with the sub, just went boom, sounded great. Stereo mix, you just hear the build up, and then
Nothing.
you heard nothing. So we had to take that sound, pitch it up slightly, use a special plugin called Max Bass, which uses upper harmonics, recreates upper harmonics, so that you get sound information that will reach smaller speakers. And then going on smaller speakers affects it as well. So usually the dynamics, like the loud parts might sound too loud and the low parts too low, so you want to get it a bit more in range. And then on headphones, the big thing is panning, so you've got to be really careful with your panning. In fact, something I notice even professionals do is pan stuff too heavily. Panning's a really useful tool to draw attention to things and make things more immersive, but in the same way it draws attention, it can be really distracting when you don't want something to be distracting. So yeah, there's all these different things, all these different elements. We do theatrical mixes as well. They're done separately. The reason is because the arrays are completely different. So it's obviously trying to reach a big room, as opposed to the other mixes are done for a single point. So the way the speakers are set up is completely different. In fact, even the tweeters are completely different. They use horn-loaded tweeters, so they're much harsher. But the idea is that it reaches a sort of broader space, because higher frequencies are really directional. So there's lots of different things to balance, and it's difficult to get right, even for professionals. But the key is just to check things and try and get things as close on all your formats as possible.
Yeah. It seems to me that you have the dynamic of especially cinema theaters compared to TV or a phone. You lose actually the bass, and you lose different things. But when we translate that, let's say, to a filmmaker, right? They try to do DIY sound mix, and they try to do their best to put together a good sound mix. Like, what are the things that they should check? Because they don't have to deal with 5.1 or different dynamics like that.
I guess just try and listen to stuff in to their films on different setups, basically, as many different setups as
That should be
possible.
enough.
So
like the fact that they actually listened on different devices.
and try and identify issues because things will change. It's just like you'll be aware. People have their TVs all set up completely, ridiculously, and every TV is different. It's the same with speakers, in fact, more so. So it's really important to listen to it on headphones, listen to it out of a TV, listen to it on good speakers. I think that's the very least you can do if you're doing it DIY. Obviously, if you give it to a professional, that stuff's taken extremely seriously. We spend hundreds of thousands on acoustically treated rooms to get the neutral sound as possible. But I'd say if you're doing it DIY, it's just key to listen to it on headphones, on small speakers, big speakers, and things will jump out that didn't jump out before.
Gotcha. Sam, I think we reached the end of our time together, and I'm gonna let you go. And I'm really, really thankful, Sam. Like, seriously, for you being so nice, answering all my questions, also sharing all your knowledge. And hey, is there a way that the listeners can know more about you, your work, or how they if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I work at a production company called Halo Post. People can reach out to me through the website address on there. I'm on LinkedIn. People can add me on LinkedIn. I accept invites from LinkedIn all the
Okay.
time. Like to connect with people. I'm on Twitter as well, but Twitter's a bit of a hole right now, so I don't really visit it
Okay.
very often. Yeah, just Samuel Castleton. You'll find me.
Sounds great.
No, it's like I say, I'm happy to talk about sound and film whenever. I love it.
Thank you so much. I wish I could hide you right
Thanks,
now.
buddy. It's been
Like, I
fun.
guess virtually we cannot do
No,
that,
it's
but
good.
I really, really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
If you want to learn more about sound mix DIY and how to organize your timeline and that kind of thing, well, we have specific exclusive content for you on howwefilm.com. You just need to go on the website to subscribe. It's for free. You don't need to pay anything. And also, if you have any question regarding documentary production, remember we have a section on howwefilm.com where you can submit your question. I'll do my best to create a video with the answer, and then we're going to publish on our podcast documentary questions.